change is part of life. Change is actually, I heard someone saying that change is the only fixed thing in our lives. The problem is, in the last few years, change has been more radical, more surprising, more like disruptive.
The development paradigm is shifting. That poverty has shifted, and there are more poor people in rich countries than in the poor countries. That is a big change, and we have to adjust to it.
I think one of the biggest challenges facing civil society across the world is the shrinking space for people to come together, to mobilize, to organize. If you take something like the internet, we were so hopeful that it would liberate people to be able to communicate with each other, to resist. But actually, the internet is being used by many states to clamp down on people's ability to dissent.
I think the rise in extreme weather events as a result of climate change not simply being something we're going to experience in the future, but we are experiencing now, is going to cause, if the last 10 years is anything to go by, quite significant disruption.
The areas that we're concerned about with disruptive change are funding streams, and also sort of environmental change and how it disrupts our program work. In terms of funding, we see a lot of concern around this whole disintermedialization of funds going directly to the field, and we're supportive of that.
And the big thing that we realise we need to do, both as an organisation and as a sector, is find a better way to think through and articulate exactly what value we really do add. So kind of in business speak, what's our unique selling proposition?
At the discussion today, one of the things that I think will be challenging during the process now is to have a real sustainability focus, which means that climate change is part of this overall discussion. And because if we will end up with an outcome document where civil society and other parts of society will be divided into let's say, poverty eradication and climate, we will struggle a lot while implementing, because we won't have the glue.
African governments are very sensitive about what's being seen as an externally motivated agenda. And so as soon as you walk into a policy-making space and you are seen to be promoting an external agenda, given that the African Union has made the decision to advance an Africa-owned agenda, so it's becoming more and more important for local NGOs to be not only seen, but also to actually be legitimately promoting an internal agenda.
When we are working in the South to establish relationships with Southern organizations, regional networks, national organizations, to stand together in solidarity and not to crowd out the space of Southern organizations.
The number one priority has to be to nurture an independent, vibrant, diverse civil society in developing countries around the world.
There are external things going on. There's so much we need to achieve in the world, and we must not get bogged down into sort of discussions between us and disputes between us.
I really envision that over the next few years, the Global South is going to have much more influence on the decision-making of the civil society.
International NGOs just must become comfortable with risk and must take more risk, because I think as we've become bigger bureaucracies, we also have become proportionately risk averse. And in a context where the whole world is under risk from the impacts of climate change, it's an ethical imperative that international NGOs are willing to take much greater levels of risk than we've taken in the past.
We need an ongoing platform for conversation between northern and southern NGOs. And I think that ICCS is well placed to be able, particularly in the context of these annual dialogues, to be able to create that space.